All right, Jim, you are for me like a character out of one of my favorite stories. I'm like somebody who enjoys stories a lot. So to me, it's really, really a pleasure, like I was telling you before, to have you because I don't know, in a way, I feel nervous that I have one of my favorite characters in real life, so I can ask questions about that story. And the most important thing is that this story is actually real. So let's start with, I mean, anybody in my channel knows who you are already. You're the scribe of the law of one. They may know a little bit about your story and how you got involved with NLL research. The beginning of the contact also would be interesting. But I've heard you mention that one of the beginnings of how you got in contact with Carla and Don was that you were living in the movement of Back to the Land or something like that. And I heard you mention Henry David Thoreau, which was a book that I was reading recently, Walden. And how does that relate to your, just to get to know a little bit more about that Jim that was before the channeling and that idea that you had, and that how that translated or you saw as a bridge to becoming the scribe and law of one.
Okay, in 1971, I attended a school called the Adventure Trail Survival School in the mountains, Rocky Mountains, 40 miles west of Denver. The fellow there was offering a course, what he called brain self-control, and that it was supposed to be effective within the primal nature environment to help you circuit your consciousness into your frontal lobes, or the indigo energy center, the pineal gland. And all of that was done through using dreams, getting messages as to how you were blocked in that effort as a child, as you were enculturated, you might say. The whole idea was that if you could remove the blockages, the brain naturally will circuit your consciousness into your frontal lobe. So by using dreams and journaling about what it meant, and then acting out the problems that you remembered from childhood, it was successful for me. On the morning of July 12th, 1972, I was in my lean-to. We all had separate lean-tos out of sight of the camp, so we could do our journaling and dreaming in solitude. And so my frontal lobes just exploded that morning, and it felt like it was a cyclotron. I felt this click at my third eye, and the frontal lobes just started spiraling. And after that, I had a number of those experiences. But the philosophy of the school was, okay, now you have had this experience. Each one teach one. Go start your own school. Do this for others too. So I tried to do that. I looked for land and eventually found some in central Kentucky, about 70 miles southeast of where I live now. And it was 132 acres. I bought it for $6,000, which was all the money I had at the time. And I built a log cabin. And I lived there for 6.5 years by myself. And the reason I was there was because I was part of this back to the land movement that you mentioned, that was based upon Henry David Thoreau's dictum, simplify, simplify. And I was a member of the hippie revolution at the time, where most of the people going back to the land were college educated hippies that wanted to live on the land, to raise their own food, build their own homes, homeschool their children, and form a community to help each other live a more, I guess you would say, centered life, more heart-oriented life, being of service to others. So that was the situation. One night, I think it was in 1979 in May, I had a battery-powered radio, and I was listening to a station in Lexington, Kentucky, and it was WKQQ, and they had Don Elkins and Carla Ruckert on as guests, and they were asking them about UFOs, but they weren't talking about, what UFOs look like and what did they think about it. They were talking about the philosophy that the UFO entities were channeling through their group. And I was fascinated. I thought, oh, that makes sense to me, what you're saying, that we're all part of one infinite creator. and that we're all on a journey back into unity with that creator. And that's a spiritual journey. And I really wanted to meet them, but I wasn't sure how to go about it. But in that part of the county, we had a food co-op where we would get together once a month to order food that we couldn't grow for ourselves. And at one of those meetings, I was just talking to another couple who lived in the same county I did, but just on the other side of the county. I'd never met them before. And I got around to talking. I said, I heard something amazing last month. Don Elkins and Carla Rook were talking about UFOs and the philosophy. And they said, well, we're a member of their meditation group. We can introduce you to them. And so there it was, one of the best synchronicities of my life. So I went up, and for the next year, I drove up to Louisville every Sunday night and was a part of their channeling meditation. And we became very good friends. And they invited me after a year to join them in their work. So I helped them move from the location they were in at that time to the edge of Louisville and to the house that we eventually had the Law of One and Raw Contact in. So that's how it all came about.
Oh, yeah, that synchronicity was just perfectly placed there for you.
It was.
Jim, I mean, I can just do a whole hour asking you about that era in the 70s and what you were doing, but you mentioned the beginning of it, and I think I remember you had this question for Ra, and this was part of the book 5 when you were talking about the frontal lobe and how can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know there was a question that I think you asked Ra, or had Don ask Ra, about how if we remove what we call in psychology those blocks that we have, then we can start using more the frontal lobes. Is that correct? Is that something?
Right. We can activate the frontal lobes, and right. The frontal lobes then can become a gateway to intelligent infinity at some point. The frontal lobes have that ability to partake in what Ra called the magical ability to create changes in consciousness at will. And that is not something that I have been able to do terribly well, but that is a quality of the frontal lobe's experience. And it is, there are three stages. First is the activation stage, is what happened to me on that night when my frontal lobes exploded for the first time. And then there's the balancing stage. That takes a good deal of time, and it's still in process, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And then after the balancing process, then it is possible to make contact with intelligent infinity or the one creator, and to feel that presence. And most people call that a spiritual awakening or an illumination or nirvana or samadhi or kensho, all kinds of names for it. But that is still something that I'm looking forward to.
Wow. Yeah, I remember reading that question, and somehow it clicked. It just made sense of how this works and how we have different types, and they were sort of related to the energy centers as well, as how we unblock our lower energy centers. It just seems to activate more our higher levels of the brain, right?
Right. Especially important in this third density illusion that we inhabit are the red, orange, and the yellow, those very basic ones. A lot of spiritual seekers want to get right away to the higher energy centers, but we've got to really work on those lower energy centers, because that's how we deal with each other in our daily round of experiences. The red is concerned with sexual reproduction and survival. It's very basic, and we have to feel safe in our environment and look at it in a way that we see we are part of it, and there's no real threat out there anywhere. The orange has to do with our first very basic acceptance of ourselves as being unique individuals. We have our own eccentricities, our own qualities that make us who we are. And we need to know more about that. And we can find out more about that as we interact with other people on a daily basis. And if there's something that it rubs us the wrong way or causes us to feel some sort of catalyst of anger or confusion or jealousy or difficulty, disharmony, then we need to work with that. That's, as Baba Ram Dass said, that's grist for the mill. That helps us to grow. And if we can balance that so that we see that there is no real reason for fear there, that whatever we were fearing, actually, we have that quality in us too. We are, as Carla said, 360-degree beings, just like the creator. The creator is everything, and we're trying to become the creator. In order to do that, we have to know ourselves in all of these ways that catalyst throws us off our center of love, and use that catalyst and balance it so that we become that. We don't fear it anymore. And we see that we are our other selves and whatever qualities that they may excite or trip within us. So that's what we do in the orange ray. In the yellow ray, we get together with other people like ourselves, and we join in groups, and we repeat the same type of experience. Catalyst can be presented there too. And we do the same thing with it. We balance it. So Ra's, equation was know yourself through all of those interactions and balancing them, accept yourself as part of that balancing process, and then eventually you will become the creator. So those three energy centers are really important. So once we get those done, then we're available for what Ra called the harvest into the fourth density of love and understanding, because we are then able to open our hearts in unconditional love for everybody. And when we do that, then that is the quality necessary for us to be harvested. And then it's not necessary to do anything else in order to go into the fourth density. But if you wish to become the adept and go higher and work the blue ray of freely given and receive communication and inspiration, then that is where the creator first begins to express itself to you, and that you can speak with an inspiring quality that helps others on their own spiritual path. And then, of course, the indigo ray, we just talked about that it can become a gateway, and that you can have your own experiences that show you more and more of yourself as the creator, that creator which resides within your very being. So that's a short little synopsis of the energy centers or chakras, same thing.
Thank you, because I think this is one of the most important things. And if I get anything from the raw material and the Confederation's philosophy at all, is that this is the most important thing. Like, this is what they want to communicate to us, what's called spiritual evolution, or simply the knowing of the self. And I'm going to use this as a segue and try to stay a little bit more here, because I think this is the most important material. But I want to use it as a segue for wanderers too, because that's a big topic. And one of the things that seems to happen is that wanderers that realize that they have gone through third density already, they feel, and you mentioned something really important, which I still don't get. I'm still obviously traveling this path, but how we shouldn't be hasty of trying to activate higher energy centers without paying attention to the lower ones. So would it seem, and this is my question for you, Jim, is it correct to say, or it's somewhat correct to say, that we should always pay attention to anything that we can recognize that comes from a lower energy center blockage, as we know the blockages being red ray, orange, or yellow, and while at the same time mostly just feeling the higher energy centers? Does that make any sense? And especially with wanderers who feel that way.
Yes, it makes all the sense in the world, because if you want to do any work in the higher energy centers without throwing yourself off balance and risking real difficulties, you need to keep those lower energies open and be sure that they're not blocked because of some sort of a catalyst. The way that you can tell if you've been triggered is can you say that you felt love for whatever experience that you're thinking about? Was love the response? And if love was not the response, and if you were questioning or angry or confused, then you have something to work with. And it's a good thing, because working with that type of catalyst, or any catalyst, and all catalysts, keeps those lower energy centers open so that you can eventually do work in the higher centers. It's a work in progress all the time. It's never done. You have to keep doing it. And that's the important thing. And it's, the spiritual journey isn't one of just the glories and the expanded perceptions of the higher centers. It's the nitty-gritty work of the lower centers. That's where the foundation is built. You have to have a good foundation, or your house isn't going to stand.
I think I'm going to print t-shirts that say "Love your catalyst."
It's a good one.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's how I feel that, and this is something that seems to happen naturally, that as you progress in this and you reap the rewards of processing catalysts, and you feel yourself so much better in a way you can't really explain, but just by going through that process. It's what in spiritual communities call the dark night of the soul, perhaps, of just going through that and realizing that there was something better and more loving after all of this. So Jim, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about wanderers, because some people may not feel wanderers, and yet they feel a strong resonance with the law of one. I personally feel 50-50. Like when I hear things about wanderers and not wanderers, I just feel like I'm just one individualized portion of the one creator. That's all I care. We're all equal in this illusion. But how does this, in your experience, you have dealt with a lot of people and all kinds of relationships with saying, I feel like a wanderer. I don't feel like part of this planet. How does this all merge together in terms for the person in a practical sense, for them to still do the work that we're still doing here? Because third density, regardless if you're a wanderer or from this earth, you're still working with the lower energy centers and the catalyst that is third density.
Yes, everybody has to do that. Wanderers don't get any breaks. In fact, it can be a more difficult situation for wanderers to live in this third density illusion, especially on Earth, because we have so many people here that are repeating third density, and there's so much disharmony, and there have been so many wars and very difficult situations in the past with Atlantis and what's going on now. And, there've been so many world wars and wars in different parts of the world. So it's a hard place to be. And one of the first things a wanderer discovers is that the difficulties here within this third density are very hard to take, because wanderers are usually more oriented towards love and compassion, and to have to work within this illusion is sometimes difficult. Ra suggested that problems, mental problems and physical and emotional problems are quite common for wanderers. And if a person is a wanderer, it's really well to take Ra's advice about working with the catalyst seriously, and because a wanderer may experience more catalyst than the ordinary person. And so whether you're a wanderer or not, if you really want to progress in your own spiritual evolution, it's necessary to do the work. And that isn't always easy, to realize that everything that's happening around you has a purpose to teach you something more about yourself, something more about how you can accept that quality in yourself that you see in somebody else that you don't like. The fact that you don't like it there means that they're mirroring to you what there is in you that still needs to be worked on. So that's probably one of the best way any spiritual seeker, wanderer or not, can look at what's happening in the world. It's hard to remember that this is an illusion, that this third density is an illusion, but it seems real for the very important purpose to help us grow here, so that we can polarize our consciousness more in a positive sense of service to others. And in that serving of other people, then we not only help them, but we are able to be graduated or harvested into the fourth density of love and understanding at some point. And apparently that harvest is going on now. Every person who passes, from this life and drops the body walks into the light, and it gauges your violet ray to see how the balance of the energy centers is. Can you take the impact of the fourth density light? So in order to do that, we have to clear our energy centers. We have to use the catalyst that comes our way. and process it in a way that allows our energy centers to stay open and be of service to others and make the graduation ourselves. That's what serving others. Ross said that one who serves others will naturally receive a benefit because you are your other selves. We're all one. So if you're serving others, you're also helping yourself out too. So
yeah, there's something that I read in the raw material in terms of the purpose of the wanderers that you mentioned, how one of the things that wanderers do is that they're also aiding their social memory complex by the experiences they're having here, because they're experiencing things that the social memory complex hasn't experienced or something like that. And this is another thing that comes to mind in this topic is the amount of, or the privilege that we may have here, whether be wanderers or not, because of the amount of catalysts, and extrapolating from what we discuss individually, how we can use individual catalysts, we're still also doing a global work, right? Of this global catalyst, right? Does that make sense?
yes, if you can share love with any other person, you're actually sharing it with the potential social memory complex of the entire planet, because we are all one. And that is something that is not usually experienced or known, but it's something that's very true. So the more of us that get together and attempt to polarize our consciousness in service to others, the more we help everybody else on the planet do the same thing. That energy is there in potential to be utilized whenever a person needs extra help. It's just like there are members of the Confederation that do nothing but send love and light to planets like Earth, so that it can be used as a kind of food and a fuel for making it through this difficult experience we're having. There are they're wanderers of a kind. There are people that Ra called that they had doubly activated bodies. They've already graduated from other third density planets, and they've come to Earth early to help out because they see all of the disharmony and turmoil, separation and anger that we see every day as a great opportunity to be of service. They're coming here because it exists and they can help with it. They not only help with it, but they help themselves grow and their own beginning social memory complex, which will be here on this earth, hopefully, after all of this is said and done.
Jim, there's a phrase that I got from you that I believe, and at least this is how I memorize, I seek to know in order to serve. And that has stuck with me forever. The way we are of service to others, since we're on this topic, initially I feel like we get the idea that we need to do something for other people, but the service to others, in a way, does that also, or is it mostly something that comes out of ourselves and just the desire of service to others as opposed to an action?
Most important thing, I believe, according to Ra, is the intention. It's really hard to know whether you've really been of service to others, because understanding, as Ra said, is not of this density. But what you do know and have something to say about is what your intentions are. So if you set your intention every day to take advantage of whatever opportunity comes your way to be of service, it doesn't have to be, really deep in depth, working in a food kitchen or helping people find housing, but it can be that too. It could be something as simple as helping a person get their groceries into the car, or waving at somebody, giving them a smile on the street. It doesn't have to be fancy or in depth, just whatever comes your way that day. Just be ready to be of service, however it may happen. When it snowed here recently, we had ice on our sidewalk. So I have two neighbors that are elderly, and I know that they don't want to walk on ice. So I got rock salt and I spread it on their sidewalks. That wasn't fancy, but it came my way. And it was a chance I had to be of service. And they were very grateful because they don't want to fall down. Nobody wants to fall down, especially if you're 80 years old. It's hard to get up. So whatever comes your way, it could be an infinity of things. So just look for it and try to imagine when you're with somebody who might need service, how can I be of service to them? Is there any way?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I remember Kuo saying something like that too, that some people may have what we humans believe it's something very popular, huge, or great service, and others what seems to be small service, but they're all the same in the eyes of the creators. Just service to others is service to the one in the end. So it doesn't matter how big or small we may perceive it, but that's just the service we're here to provide, because we're all one, like you said. Let me do this because I think we created a beautiful groundwork now for the next question, which I know is really profound, is profound in the sense of how much is involved, but I think we can at least do a summary of healing, because we talked about unblocking the energy centers, and in general, Jim, just in general, how does healing in this sense work for the adept or the person who is having a spiritual awakening and is clearing their energy center blockages?
Well, Ross suggested that the healer has the function of offering the opportunity for the one to be healed to heal itself, that to allow the creator to heal itself. The healer doesn't actually heal. The healer helps to break the red and violet energy center combination that holds in place whatever kind of disease or health you have in mind, body, and spirit. That the red-violet protective shell is what's it called. Then the healer has the ability, either through its own internal practices or if they're using crystals, to interrupt that red-violet protective shell so that there is a chance for the one to be healed to heal itself. And this would occur if the higher self would agree that the situation needing healing is ready for healing. And that means usually that you've learned the lesson for whatever it was that caused the disease or distortion that you're seeking to heal. Usually there's a reason, and usually it's pre-incarnatedly chosen, a way of you learning a certain lesson. And if you haven't learned it well enough mentally, then that lesson is given to the body by the mind, because the body is the creature of the mind, and it will come out, it will manifest as some kind of disease. So that's usually what is attempted to be healed in the healing and the one to be healed's relationship. And again, that's the way it works, is that protective shell is interrupted. And if it is appropriate for the healing to occur, then the healer will help the one to be healed to heal itself. And then that shell will be reintegrated, and the new form, the new configuration of health/disease will be in place and ready to, and others will see that there hasn't been a healing. You know, Carla was healed through this kind of process by the woman in Mexico City, Pachita. And she did, she was able to do that there in that same way. And the healing occurred because it was time for the healing to happen.
Okay, so this is the function or the healing with the healer, but what about self-healing? Does that also apply in this sense, in a way?
I believe we can heal ourselves. I believe the process is somewhat similar. I think that it has to do with understanding what it is that we are experiencing that seems to need the healing. And then through meditation and asking for our guidance or our higher self to intervene, that the healing can occur. And again, this would have to be an appropriate type of situation in which we have learned the lesson. And I think that a lot of introspection is the first thing that we need to do in that case. We need to look at the situation that we feel needs healing and ask, well, where did it come from? What does it represent? Because usually it symbolically represents something that we have not used well in our processing of catalyst. And if we can determine what it is that we have not used well, then we can begin to process it mentally and then go into our meditative state and seek more assistance there from our guides, our higher self, or from the creator. to heal that with the understanding that it is necessary for us to work with it first in an intellectual way, in a way to understand the origin of it.
This is important, and good thing that you mentioned it. I remember you saying, and this is something that stuck with me as well, the connection between how we communicate with our higher self and the methods that we use here, which are meditation and the direction of the will and faith. And those are sort of related as well with how we set our intentions for the day, say, for asking anything to be of service of. And it seems like a very simple and practical way of allowing the illusion to also talk to yourself. It's almost like we're asking the illusion to we become permeable to these experiences that we need, and I think that there's a commonality there, right? And how we use the meditation, the direction of will, and faith that what we're going to receive is what we need in terms of catalyst, and this catalyst works for healing too. Does that make sense?
I think you put it very well. Yeah, those are the qualities that we need to utilize in our the healing process: the faith, the will, the meditation, and the previous intellectual examination of the situation to try to get a practical description of it as to the origin, and then to set our intention to use the faith and the will and the meditation and ask for inner guidance. I think altogether, that's the process.
Great. I think one last factor that I would throw in there, which sometimes we forget to, is to enjoy it, just to enjoy every single, thing that just happens, no matter what it is. It's an experience. Just enjoy it. At least I feel like there's just such a release of energy from when I just smile or laugh or just, I don't know, take in the sun, whatever it is. It's a good thing just to add in there.
Very good point. Very good point.
Jim, there's one, to make a curve here, there's one topic that I want to try to put it as precise as possible, which is and we can go as much as you want in there, but this one specific or specificity within the question or doubt that there exists in this topic, which is the sexual energy transfer. And I've discussed this with Austin and Gary, and there was a question that I don't think I got the answer properly. And we do know, it's clear to us that sexual energy transfer is possible between opposite and same gender. But the question that really, stuck with me and I couldn't get an answer still is there anything, or is there any difference between same gender or opposite gender sexual energy transfer just because of the polarity that exists biologically? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, and biologically, I don't think is the important point. I think the important point is that of the two, there must be one that has the male energy of reaching and the other, the female energy of receiving. And then that's all that's necessary, that you can make a transfer then if you set yourself as the intention to do so. And if you are at the green ray energy center or above, sexual energy transfers don't happen below the green energy center. So the heart has to be open. The unconditional love has to be activated. And if that's activated, then it's possible to have a sexual energy transfer between the two that have the principles, the male and female principles, no matter their biological sexuality.
Okay. Yeah, I think the way I've been pointing out to this confusion is that because what I remember, Don was also inquiring about the conceiving of the child in that line of questioning, and how the red ray energy transfer there, which obviously has to do with biological male and female, but not sexual energy transfer of the higher energy centers, which is, like you mentioned, I think this is the most important point, the heart, is it's random. It's a random energy transfer from the red ray Because I know that Don wanted to know if there was something metaphysically happening that could determine if the person could conceive a child or not. So I think that might be the source of the confusion for a lot of people that think of the biological sexual energy transfer as was discussed in the raw material. Does that ring a bell for you?
Right. Yeah. Don didn't specifically ask the question, that you just asked me, whether it was biologically necessary for them to be opposite biologically. But Ra suggested that each male was female, each female was male. So we have both of those qualities in us. So I think Ra gave us the information that I just relayed to you as to how this could happen. Don wasn't specifically questioning that area.
Right.
We didn't do that.
Awesome.
This is one of the many areas we could have gone further into, but we didn't.
Well, now let's talk a little bit about the green ray energy transfer, which means that the person or the two people need to have their heart open. How do you see that, or how can people know that, Jim? How is there? I know Ra mentioned that you can know that there was blue energy transfer if you can see an improvement of honesty and communication with the heart. That's the basis for any one of us who want to engage in sexual energy transfer. Do you have any ideas or landmarks?
Well, Ross suggested the green ray transfer was a feeling of wholeness, that there was a completeness to the experience. I think all of this is up to personal discernment of being able to intuit yourself what's going on. I don't think we can actually describe it precisely for every couple or person that engages in sexual energy exchanges. I think basically, the way we're supposed to be looking at our harvestability is our hearts are 51% giving of love and service to others, and only 49% service to self. So that's all that's really necessary to make the harvest. And I think that there would be something similar or equivalent in the sexual energy transfer. The heart needs to be open, at least to 51%, to see the creator in every person. And that's, and all thoughts, words, and actions, 51% need to be intended to be of service to others. So we're into an area that you really can't quantify or measure with physical accuracy or physics accuracy.
Yeah.
It's something you have to intuit and intend. So that's sort of the way it is, I believe. You really couldn't know without seeking some inner guidance from your own intuition.
I'm interested in the implication of the 51% as it relates to the feeling, because it really is just a feeling. Like you said, there's no way to accurately measure 51% anything, but just how you feel. And I find a correlation there between how you feel as a separate self and how you feel as one with everybody. And the more that, like we have discussed, more catalysts that we can work with, so we can find the love in that situation, moment, person, it's like we're opening a lot more our wholeness, like you're saying. And that does make sense. Thank you.
Yeah. I think if we can just imagine, well, I see this person on television, or I've read about them in the paper. If I was sitting next to them, what would I say to them?
Huh.
How would I converse with them? What would be my topic? Would I criticize them? Would I tell them what I thought of them in a negative way? Or would I say, well, how are you doing? And what is important in your life? And when you said this, what were you thinking? What do you think about loving people that you don't know? Is that possible? Can you do that? Just imagine the conversation and try to get a feel for it.
I get an exercise sometimes in my mind like that. I try to go to their stories, their history, actually, how was their upbringing? What did they have to face? How much catalyst they actually have work with? And they have suppressed or, overcome, what's their story. And I think one of the most beautiful things is that we all have an epic story behind us. Like, we all have something that can be, if we could express it with our feelings, not everybody's a good writer, but if we can express it, it would just be beautiful. So thank you. Thank you for that, Jim.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
There's a topic that I have to confess, Jim, that I can't wrap my head around, and is the perception of the negative entity once it passes, it dies, and goes through the process of revision. Because in my mind, I'm thinking that they go to their higher self. And to me, the higher self, I guess I try to romanticize it as a higher self wants, to bring back to unity. But I also get the contrast that the higher self resides beyond polarity, which means that no matter what the path that the soul has elected, it'll try to help that soul come up, if that, as it were, to unity. So, but how do you have any insights with all the channelings after Ra? Because I don't know if Ra mentioned, I know they talked about a little bit negative time space, which is another thing, that negative time space and space time. That's another question I have. But let's start with the negative entity, that after death, how does that revision go? Does that?
Well, we didn't get precise information on that, but Don was asking Ra about Heinrich Himmler, which is one of the top commanders in the Nazis in Germany, World War II. And so it said, well, would Heinrich Himmler's higher self be negative? And Ra said, no, not necessarily. Well, they didn't say no. They said that what is the first separation? Separation and control are the qualities of negative polarity. What is the first separation? Self from self. So Heinrich Himmler would see his higher self as negative and would interpret any information that came from the higher self in a negative light.
Wow. Okay.
So that, I think, is basically it. And I've wondered that myself. I'm just guessing, and this is just a thought, that when a negatively oriented entity is in between incarnations and planning incarnations, they probably have negative guides that help them do the planning. And that's just the way I think it would work, because they think that they are on the correct path for the most effective and speedy polarization back into unity with the Creator. They think that to be in this heart, the heart ray, the green ray, is foolish, and you need to get to the blue and the indigo so that you can make contact with the Creator through the red, orange, and yellow, having them so polarized in separation from others that you're able to get, skip that blue ray, skip the green ray, because that's not going to do you any good. That's foolishness. So I'm just guessing they do have to have, or would have to have, negatively oriented guides. We all have guides. Ross said we have a positive, or a male and a female, and one that's androgynous. And I would imagine that whichever one that would be helping out between incarnations would also be of a negative nature, or perceived as negative. Perception is everything.
So yeah, thank you. That's a little congruent actually with what I was thinking before, because one of the things that seems to happen is that the negative entity corrupts or perverts the information for its own gain, and that gain would be further and further separation. So even the information that is distilled, so to speak, to the negative entity from the higher self may be corrupted and perverted, not because the higher self has a specific agenda, but because there is a yearning, a calling. This also makes sense as to why intuitively a negative entity is also progressing to unity, whether they know it or not. They might realize it, close to sixth density, but Does that make sense also? Like how the communication between, this can be also between the unconscious and the conscious mind. I don't know if I'm getting into the tarot here, too hastily, but that's that may be also what's happening in terms of the information that's going to the higher to the negative entity.
Yes, I think there is a process like that going on. The negative entity, I believe, has its roots in the second density experience, where there are certain negative behaviors that aren't seen as polarizing there because they're the way that the second density animals would behave. But at some point, the creature is able to become enough aware of itself so that the general awareness is transferred into self-consciousness. And it is some distance along that negative path before the negative path becomes conscious to it. It may be simply expressing more animalistic types of behavior in the early third density of its experience, but at some point it will consciously begin to see that it wishes to gain at the expense of others and will pursue that negative path in a conscious fashion. But I believe it has its roots further back before the third density. I don't think it's something that's necessarily chosen in the third density, while an entity's maybe contemplating, well, should I go positive or negative? Well, let's see, flip a coin. I think that it happens far before that. And Ra mentioned something about use an analogy of a picnic. Entities are on a picnic, and most of the entities enjoy the sunshine, the interaction, the food, and the games of the picnic, and they are more positive polarized. However, there are some entities that prefer the darker side of the picnic, the perversions of interaction with each other, the self consciousness of the superiority of the self. And they throw back their heads and with a grim laughter choose the darkness. And it just seems to be the way that it has come. And there is evidence that this happens first in the second density, and it happens innocently there, but it is transferred to the third density and becomes a very possible choice at some point. But it has to become a conscious choice to actually be negative polarity.
Right. Would be interesting to see if there is sort of study that we can make on the, probably beyond our times right now, but of the planetary second density entities, and see how much of cooperation there exists there, and if there's a relationship between the amount of, say, like what Ra gave us, 10% negative of the whole universe seems to be negative, and the other 90%, very vague percentage, but to see something similar in the planet. In terms of negative, we're talking about the negative side of our ethic polarity. I want to ask about negative time space and space time. This is something that really struck me when I read that Carla was at risk of getting into negative time space, and if she would have died, she would have to reincarnate in space time negative. Those two things just became too blurry for me, and I said, I don't know how to interpret this. This is strange.
Yeah, I know. We spent sessions 69, 70, and 71, Don did, questioning about those very topics, trying to figure out how this worked, because it was something that was very hard to understand and very threatening, a possibility that, it almost happened when Carla was channeling on a Sunday night meditation for the public, and got this question she didn't know the answer to, and thought to herself, I don't know the answer to this question. I wish I were channeling Ra. And that was all it was necessary for her to begin leaving her body, and to have the negative entity approach and attempt to lure her out of her body. And fortunately, those of La Tui were also fifth density and were able to keep channeling words through her so this couldn't happen. But so the negative time space, again, I don't think we ever got any satisfying answers or solutions to it. But if there are negatively oriented entities, there must be a location within the universe where they are able to practice their presence, you might say, to be who they are, to create an environment in which they are at home and they live as naturally as do in time, space, and space time. I think, well, if we would look at what we do here in the third density and how we seem to create our own reality by our intentions of being of service to others, I can only extrapolate then, and this is just my opinion, that the negatively oriented entities can create the same thing in their reality where they are supreme, you might say. They are the rulers of the roost. The area that they exist is that which reflects their choice to gain control and separation from all others about them and to form this hierarchy. So I think it is something that is created just as the positive space-time and time-space is created by intention, by the way the life is lived, by the way that the mind-body-spirit complex spends its energies, and whether these energies are spent in a way that helps other people or helps only the self. I believe it is a self-created environment. Now, that's, like I said, it's just my thought, but we never got any firm information, any solid physics on the process as to, was negative time, space, and space-time created before there were negative entities? Because, at one point back at the beginning of the creation here, there was no negatively oriented entities. They were all positive. There was no veil between the conscious and unconscious mind. And there had to be many, many repetitions of third density before they could ever achieve polarity, because they saw everyone was the creator, that they were in a state of Eden, the Garden of Eden, and that there was no reason to change that status. They said, I'm the creator, you're the creator, no one's more the creator than anyone else. So that's the way it began. And Don asked a very perceptive question at one point in the contact. He said, now, before there was any manifestation, any creation, there was only the creator. Then is it not true that the only concept of service was service to self, because there was only the creator? And the concept of service to other selves developed only when the creation was made, and there were other selves and other portions of the creator to serve. And Ross said that is very perceptive. So that's apparently where the concept of service to self came from. It was there first, because the creator was the only thing there was. Once the creator made a creation, then the concept of service to others was born. So that is kind of like a foundation or a beginning point for negatively oriented entities. And at some point then, they decided that the veil of forgetting, the logoi decided, well, this veil here can then change this positive only polarity so that there can be negative polarity too. And the positive polarity can begin to be more successful in polarizing and make the harvest, because deep within the heart of each entity's beingness, past the veil, is that knowing that you're all one. So somewhere inside, positive entities would know that there is something more. There is an other self. There's a way of being of service. So that veil, by keeping everyone from knowing that they are the creator, helped the polarization process to be more effective in seeking and serving the creator in everyone. So I'm assuming then that what Ross said, that right away, as soon as the veil was introduced, negative polarity occurred. But it took a while for it to be able to be harvested itself. So there must be a way then for the negatively oriented entities to be able to have that same knowledge that there is more to this, and I am the creator. I feel the creator. And I'm going to control others around me so I can have more power to become that creator. So I think that's the way it works. But again, it's my opinion from what we know, and that was a negative, not negative, but service to self was first, and then positive came second.
So this there was no negative entities before the veil, but there was service to self. Because I remember, did Don ask that question too, or that was discussed, that there was service to self and service to others was there, but there was no incentive, right? To
It was only
discern it.
there. It was only there in theory,
Okay.
but that theory then could be put into practice, perhaps, and eventually it was. You know, how long it took until the various logoi said, well, in order to help the creator know itself, we have to have some way of getting these third density entities to harvest, they have to polarize. And then somehow the veil was thought of as, well, let's separate the conscious and unconscious minds. And it worked. But it was the nakedness of hypothesis. They did not know it was going to work until it worked.
This is what created the complex in the individual mind, body, spirit, right? The introduction of the veil.
Yeah.
Okay. I know that's a long study, so we're not going to get into that, at least not in depth. But I want to share something, Jim, and you let me know if this makes sense to you or resonates at all. But I'm thinking, as you're talking, I'm visualizing all of this, and I see that the negative path seems to be, and I'm thinking also what you refer to as what Ross said, that this is like a picnic, and some enjoy the light, some enjoy the dark. But it seems that in the end, there is only the creator. There is only the creator everywhere. And the negative path seems to be, I know in human terms, it sounds strange to put it this way, but it's a fun way for the creator to experience itself as the master of its own universe. Because it seems to me, again, that the point of separation from third density is to control other people. Then in fourth density seems to control planets. In fifth density, I don't know, maybe galaxies, or just the delusion of control, which again, it's a human language to use delusion, but it's all an illusion. There is an illusion of separation that we're enjoying as in the positive path as well, but the negative path seems to enjoy that. So in the end, I'm trying to just wrap everything around with the one creator and how, it makes sense that this creation, because a lot of people seem to have a sort of issue, which I think is human, that there is negativity, that there shouldn't be any negativity if there is just one positive creator, but it doesn't seem to equate that the positive and the negative exist on their own, but they're one. And this is the grand scheme of things. So I don't know, this is just my ramblings in my mind, and how, the creator may experience itself from the negative as well, and it's fine.
Yeah, the whole idea of the creation is to help the creator know itself better. And that's why it made the entire creation, so that everybody's free will choices, whatever they are, positive or negative, will help the creator to know more of itself. Now, as far as the negative path and how far it can go, Ross suggested that there is a limit to how far the negative path can go. It can make it through the fourth density and the fifth density, densities of love and wisdom. But when the sixth density comes about, there is where love and wisdom must be balanced. It's necessary in order to make it into and through the sixth density to see all other selves as the self and as the creator. That's easy for the positive polarity because that's the way it travels all the way through the densities. The negative polarity has a problem. They do not see the other selves, or have not seen other selves, as the same as the self or the creator. But now, being very wise, having made it through the density of wisdom, they see that they're going to have to switch polarities. They're going to have to reverse it. And they can do that because their power, as Ross said, is the same as the positive. The creator blinks neither at the light nor the darkness. When they have used the negative polarity to control other selves, they have created this power that allows them now to reverse the negative polarity and become positively oriented entities, saying like, okay, guys, you're right, we're wrong, but we got here, and we gave the creator a whole lot more experiences that you didn't give him, So we're going to have both ways, the positive and the negative.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. They have to switch it so that, and then eventually by the mid sixth density, the concept of polarity is dropped altogether, positive and negative.
Right.
It's a tool. It's a tool that's been used to get both positive and negative to that point. So then the progress is consciously. You don't have to use polarity. You have the power of the balance of wisdom and love within your being. You are that. Ra became the light. They are the light. So that is how happens after mid-sixth density. And polarity is a thing of the past. It's history.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the fact that we can see all negative entities as and respect them and love them for what they are, the same way we can enjoy here in as a human and say, you like chocolate ice cream, I like vanilla ice cream. It's fine. We're different, but we enjoy, we're enjoying ice cream together. So that's all that matters. I can ask so many questions here, Jim, but I'm interested also in, we'll take a little turn here, in something that to me is a little fuzzy, but still there's a substance there that it's of great quality, which are the disciplines of the personality, as Ra called them. How do you summarize this? What are the disciplines of the personality, and how does that ramify to everything else that we know that happens in evolution of the soul?
Well, the discipline of the personality is simply exercising the balancing process that we were talking about earlier, and how to use catalyst, how to grow in a disciplined fashion, to discipline yourself to look at the catalyst that comes your way every day, and to see how you need to balance that, to accept yourself for having that portion of the creator within you, which you saw and did not appreciate in some way or other. Incidentally, also you balance the positive experiences too. The positive experiences also need to be balanced. So, great joy and excitement about something you did well and that you feel really good about yourself, that needs to be balanced just as like, oh, I messed it up. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm so sorry I did that. The positive and the negative need to be balanced with their opposites, because we are all things. The creator is all things. That's what we're trying to do when we become the creator, is to use the discipline of the personality to balance the catalyst that comes our way every day, whether it's positive or negative. And that's the way we grow. That's the way we become the 360-degree being. We come to know ourselves, accept ourselves, and become the creator. That's the discipline of the personality.
Yeah, this actually Ra gave that exercise as well to balance. I don't remember if it was when Don asked about if an individual experience an emotion, it would feel no emotion. I forgot what was the question or the way he phrased it, but I know that Ra mentioned that we should always balance it with the opposite. So if we feel something, like you said, joy, then we balance it with the understanding of sorrow. Now, to me, that was just like, okay, if I'm feeling something that is great, why would I try to experience the opposite? Whereas in the other side, it makes sense. But then I saw that the Buddhist teachings tells you the same thing, that for you to you need to reconcile, as using Ra's words, reconcile the opposites, which is a way of not only feeling yourself into one polarity and trying to stay there, but also to become aware of the other possibility and know that you couldn't have one without the other. And this seems to be the balancing process. Does that make sense in the way I'm putting it?
Yeah, Ross suggested that we really can't be picking and choosing the qualities that we want to express in our lives, because they're all distortions. They're distortions of the very basic quality of love. So in session 42, I think is what you were thinking of, Ra or Don talks about if you're in a a pen with a bull and he charges you and attacks you, you get out of his way so that he doesn't hurt you. And
Yeah.
so, but with a human being, it's a little more difficult. With the basic quality hold. And Ross said, yes. And Don said, well, what would be the quality that you would feel if somebody attacks you? And Ross said, if you're a balanced being, it would be love. So that's the whole thing. Anything that takes you away from love, the high feelings, the low feelings, the positive feelings, the negative feelings, love is the standard. Love is where we're trying to get to with our hearts being open. Love helps us graduate. And that's the consciousness of love is what created the universe. The free will of the creator wanting to know itself focused through love and formed light. And that's where the creation came from. The power of love formed the universe. So that's what we're trying to reproduce within our own beings. And that's why we need to balance everything, because that's just the way it works. We're looking to get to love, and nothing else is as important as love.
So is it safe to say, Jim, that love is what binds polarity, to have a positive and a negative, or a high and a low, or anything? It's just that is almost like the yin yang, that middle in between. That's love. That's what's attracting all opposites.
Right. It's love. The negative entities for a while love only the self. Like I said, though, they will eventually learn how to love other selves too. But their love is love. And they love the
Right.
creator. They want to be the creator. They see that. They're going to the same place. So yeah, love is it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, is that because some people say, well, how can a negative entity graduate to fourth density, the density of love? I mean, the only answer that I've gotten to that is that they do love themselves. They just seem to love themselves more than anything else, right?
And they do love the creator. They just think they're more the creator than anybody else.
Right. Separation. That makes sense.
Not more the creator than you do.
Jim, I think it's time to ask you this, because we're kind of in this point, which is what we discussed previously. The individual soul and its progression. Now, I want to tie it in with a concept that it's fascinating to me, which is the logos providing basic catalyst, and how this will continue to happen until the individual soul, or the entity itself, can work with this basic catalyst to produce their own catalyst. So I know this is it's a very complex topic, but if we can just talk a little bit about this, and how does that work, that the logos is providing basic catalysts, and at which point does that start becoming your owner of the catalyst, if that makes sense? And how does that also, now let me leave this question for, let me not complicate it too much. So let's talk about this part of the logos, and then the entity producing its own catalyst.
Well, basically, for beginning third density entities, the logos does provide catalyst that goes through the red, orange, and yellow centers. And it's random. It's random until the mind-body-spirit complex, until the entity consciously becomes aware of the process of evolution during the incarnation. As soon as that happens, then it can begin using the catalyst that has been given to it by the logos in a conscious fashion and make spiritual progress on its path. And then when it goes into the next incarnation, is making pre-incarnative choices, then it gets to partake in the choosing of the catalyst or the pre-incarnative choices that are going to come up in the next incarnation, the lessons that will be learned, until eventually the entity is able to make all those choices for itself. Until, first the logos does it, then the entity is conscious, then it gets help from the guides and so forth. And then it begins to program its own. And Ross suggested the only problem with being able to program all your own catalyst is that some entities try to learn too much in one incarnation, and they sort of make it too hard for themselves, and they are inefficient in their learning. So, and Don said, well, it's kind of like taking too many courses in college, right? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So Yeah, that makes total sense. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about, it seems to be like a transition between the second density entity, which is actually getting all catalysts random to itself. It doesn't know itself yet. That's
Right.
its evolution is to realize that it's a self and consciousness of self-awareness. And in the self-awareness, which is the, if I get it right, correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, the endowing of the spirit is the quality of self-awareness, of knowing yourself. And so as this is, I mean, to me, it just makes sense to call it this way, because spiritual evolution to me is knowing of the self. And to know yourself, you need to have self-awareness. So at the beginning stages of third density, it seems like the logos is providing the same basic catalyst that was provided to second density, so
Mhm.
as to feed the self-awareness of the entity. Does that make sense? And that's how.
That's very good point. Yes, I think you got it. You hit the nail on the head there. The second density creatures are attempting self-consciousness or self-awareness. And as soon as they are able to do that effectively enough, then they activate the spirit complex. So they're mind, body, spirit complexes. Before they were mind, body complexes. Now they're mind, body, spirit complexes, and they're in the third density. And that self-consciousness that they were able to develop becomes the means by which further development of that quality can occur when they become conscious of the process of evolution, not just conscious that they are a human being and they're living a life, but that there has a direction to that life, that the life is a spiritual journey. It's not just eating and sleeping and working and so forth. There is a higher quality to it. So when they are aware of that, they're conscious of the evolutionary process, then they get to take part in making those choices.
That makes sense. And this is where the split occurs in terms of polarity, as we have discussing. Wow. Um, there's this now, like, we can tie it to my question initially, before we started our conversation, which is the individual soul. I know there seems to be a hint or something where they say that there is a sort of blueprint that the logos created for each individual soul of how it wants to experience itself, and that is already manifested. We are already that. We're just trying to weave our way back to that. And this blueprint of who we are is also the resource of the higher self. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but this soul, which is not manifested yet, but it's already planned, or is this. And I know there's confusion that it could be, mistaken for, oh, everything is already, written for me. I'm just I'm a tram. I'm just following a rail. Does that make sense, Jim?
Yeah, well, it's much more intricate and complicated than that. The higher self has this, I'll call it a roadmap, or it could be seen as an architecture of the development of an entity, but it's all possible routes or paths that the entity can take through the sixth density, so that the higher self has an infinity of possibilities that are unique for each entity, even though each one has this infinity of possibilities. And it is the free will choice of the entity as to which of these infinite roads it will take throughout the third, fourth, fifth, sixth density. So the higher self has all of this provided as a resource for the soul. So the soul has got all these choices it can make. It's just the same, to me, in practical terms, it would be just the same as having no plan and saying, do whatever you want, because everything you could think of doing has probably already been thought of by the higher self.
Mhm.
It has an infinity of possibilities for each person or soul to travel. So that's basically, I think, the way it works. We have our higher selves that can give us guidance on this journey, according to the choices we have made already and that we seem to be going in, the higher self can support us. Or if we seek to learn something of another nature, the higher self may well communicate to us through synchronicities and coincidences, ways to travel, maybe through dreams, through meditation. There's all kinds of ways of communication with the higher self. So we have basically the field's wide open. There's nothing we cannot do. We can make any choice we wish because we probably can't think of a choice that hasn't already been planned.
And I think this is where the quality of the creator can be felt as well, from a very humble standpoint, that anything that you're doing is actually a unique path that you're taking. And there are so many choices that we're taking all the time that it's just creating a beautiful pattern of our decisions. So that's a good point, Jim. Thank you.
Unique is probably the word used the most in the raw context.
Unique.
We're all unique. There is no one else in the universe like you. You are unique.
That's just beautiful. That's just, oh, so I love it. Jim, I want to ask you at least one more question. Since we're talking about architecture, and I know, again, all of these topics we can go on for hours, but just for a general overview on the archetypical mind or the archetypical blueprint of, which is I know this gets mixed with the tarot as well, and I want to just talk about the raw material, how they talk about the archetypical mind, and how does that relate to the blueprint of what we have in our creation, in this logoic creation with the sun here.
Well, the archetypical mind is, as you say, it's a blueprint of the nature of our evolutionary process in mind, body, and spirit. This is how it all works. Each of the mind, the body, and spirit has 7 different designations that help you to use catalyst. And that gives you an idea of how this all works. To just give you an example of the first two archetypes in the mind is the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, which again reflects the veil of forgetting. So the conscious mind is seen as the magician. It's the unfed conscious mind. It has not done anything yet. In order to do anything and to be potentiated, it has to be in contact with the unconscious mind, which is the high priestess. So the high priestess has all of our pre-incarnative choices available to it to bias the way we see our catalyst so that we will try to learn those lessons we pre-incarnatively chosen. And as we work with the catalyst, then the third archetype is the catalyst of the mind, called the Empress. And that catalyst then is ennobled by the magician's work with it so that it can process the catalyst into growth, which is stored in the fourth archetype, the experience of the mind. So these first 4 archetypes work very closely together and help us, as we use them, they help us see how this process works. And the significator is the 5th archetype. And that is the significant self that has existed through all incarnations. All the choices that have been made, all the catalyst that has been used, all the pre-incarnative choices that have been learned exist in the significator. That's our significant self. That's who we really are. Then there's the transformation of the mind's number 6, the 2 paths. We always have a choice we can make. However we use our catalyst, we can use it consciously in a positive sense or in a negative sense. So the transformation of the mind is in the number 6 card. And then the great way of the mind shows how we can, if we are successful in using all of our catalysts from all of our pre-incarnation choices throughout all our incarnations, we can make contact with intelligent infinity. So that's how it works for the mind. And we got quite a bit of information on the mind because that was the first of the ones that we investigated. We got general information on the body and the spirit, but they have basically the same function to show us what the process is. But here is where unique comes into play again. Ross said that every seeker of truth will have a unique interpretation of the various aspects or facets of each card. Each card in the tarot has different portions to it. Some have right angles and spheres and wands and things. Those all have meaning as to how catalyst is processed and what is going on in the evolutionary process. So the way that I would say is best used is it's probably the most difficult information, the most intricate information we got in the raw contact, but also it has the potential of being some of the most helpful because it describes the whole process of evolution and how it works, how we use catalyst, how we use it in the mind, how we use it in the body, how we use it in the spirit, and how we can use it as unique individuals within certain guidelines. There's a wide range of interpretation that can be made with each of the facets of the 22 archetypes, the major arcana. So that's the only part of the tarot that the archetypical mind uses is the major arcana. The minor arcana and the court arcana are not part of the archetypical mind. Those were added later by the entities of Macedonia and that wanted information on astrology from the heavens. And Ra does not use anything that's astrological in the tarot. It's only the process of evolution and how we are consciously able to affect our evolution and to proceed in a certain way that is unique to us.
So that is the difference. Okay, so that was the difference that came out of the tarot and how it was presented as almost like a field of study for the entity. And then it was used also, even though it wasn't intended for that, it was used as a collateral type of thing for divination in astrology, Jim.
Yeah, Ra said it was possible to do that, but that was not the reason Ra created the tarot when they were in the third density on Venus. And that was not what they recommend. They recommend trying to be in the present moment, here and now. Don't try to figure out what's the future's got to hold for you. You create your own future by what you do here and now.
I think that's, and I want to end it with this, Jim, because I think this is one of the most important things that we can probably get to ourselves, is that no matter what we learn, no matter what we get, to try and use our energy for, I want to use the word divination, but just trying to guess what the future is going to be is taking us away from the present. It just seems that Ra also, like many of the masters or all the masters that we have had, guides and angels that have communicated to us the same material. And I know Ross said it at the beginning, you might remember the words more precisely, but they said they're giving us the information that is always and ever the same. Right. And that would be always to concentrate in the present, and all of their tools and their information seems to bring us back to the present and just staying there.
Right. Always and ever the same, I think, is another way of saying it's the perennial philosophy. It is the same philosophy in every world religion in its mystical aspect, whether it's Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, or Judaism, or Christianity. The mystical aspect of each of those religions is the same as the law of one. It's the perennial philosophy.
I love it. Thank you, Jim. I ran out of questions, which is a good thing. We could have gone through a lot more, and I could just sit down here and talk to you for a while. But there's one question that I need to ask you just to finish this up. Gary, I believe, told me that you're working on, or you guys finished already the book, or they're finishing the touches on Living the Law of One. I know this is a series of books that Carla wanted to write, and she only got to the first one. So can you talk to us a little bit about that, what this book is, what we can expect, what else is going on?
Well, yeah, Carla had three books in mind. Her first one she got out in 2005, Living Law of One, 101, The Choice. She also created outlines for Living Law of One, 102, The Outer Work, Living the Law of One, 103, The Inner Work. So I've written first drafts of both 102 and 103, and Gary and Austin are working now to help edit 102. They have had to put it aside for a while because we've had this opportunity to hire two more people to help us work at L&L Research. And it's been a long process of interviewing. There were 30 applications, and they had to interview and get them down to four. It's down to four now. And today they'll finally finish the fourth interview, 2 hours interview. So once that's done, then they'll get back to editing 102. And I imagine probably by the end of the summer, 102 should be available. They both helped. We're working on chapter 3 right now, and they've been very helpful in helping me to improve the book by taking advantage of their suggestions and their edits. So I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to finish the series for Carla, because when she wrote 101, her idea was that, the raw contact is very precise and profound, but it's also uses concepts and words that are difficult for some people to understand. And she wrote 101 to help people get a better grasp of what was in the raw contact. That was her whole idea, to make it more accessible to people who want to know more about that. So I'm glad to be able to take part in finishing up the series. And I think I've had some help from Carla in that way.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Jim. I read that book, and I remember seeing that there was a series going on, and I said, well, this is going to be it. But just when I got the news, I was so excited, because I would love to read more about this, especially because Carla's essence is there too, with the outline that she did, and of course, who better than you to finish this up? So I'm really excited for this book, Jim. I am so grateful for your presence in L&L Research. I feel that this entity, like I told Gary, is an entity of its own being, and later I thought how Ra had mentioned that not only second density animals or plants, but also places can become aware of themselves. And I felt like L&L Research is this loving, kind, humble entity that has developed over time, and I'm in love with it. So I want to express my gratitude to you for your contribution to this entity and for what you continue to do. This is something that has helped me personally a lot in my journey, and it's helping a lot of people. And yeah, I just wanted to say that, and I don't know what else to say. Just thank you, Jim. Thank you so much.
Well, it's been an honor to be able to talk to you, and I've really enjoyed it. And I know that Don and Carla would be thrilled to see that the information that they help to produce is going around the world and helping people grow in their spiritual paths. You can, by the way, all the information that we've ever produced at L&L Research is available for free. If you go to our website, our new website, and look at all the books in our library, you can download any PDF for free. So that was Don's great hope and dream. And the internet made it possible to share all this information for free around the world.
Yeah. Like always, I have all this, the links in the description. I'm super excited with the new website too, that you guys have been working on, and all the new things that they're adding and all the projects. So anybody listening, all the links are going to be in the description, so you can get all this material. Jim, once again, I want to thank you personally for the time that you took for this interview to share with everybody, and for being of service today to me personally, just being able to exchange energy with you, and for all the people who are going to listen to this in Spanish and English. So yeah, thank you again, Jim. It's been an honor.
Been an honor for me to be here with you.
Thank you.
I hope that people can enjoy what we've produced. I want you all to know I love you all.
Thank you. Thank you. We love you too, Jim. We love you too. Says right there.